Oh, hey, Elliot, welcome to the Leaders Lab. Good to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you, Ken.
Elliot, you've got quite the background. I know you've been an entrepreneur for many years, and you've had some family situations as we all have had, but some of yours have led to some pretty big pivots in your life. But maybe start us with where are you from? Where did you grow up? Maybe start walking us through the story of Elliot, if you could.
Oh, it's a great story. Thank you, Ken.
Sure.
I'm from New Jersey. I'm from North Jersey. I still say coffee talk in the office and water, things like that. We're outside in West Orange, which is about 20 minutes from the Lincoln Tunnel, give or take.
Yep.
Uh, uh, and I grew up in a very blue collar, middle class home. My dad was part of the greatest generation, born in 1915 in World War II and all that. And my mom was an Auschwitz survivor from Europe,
Oh,
concentration.
wow.
And so that the culture that I grew up with, in a way, I was very blessed with that culture because from my father's side, I heard constantly that nothing makes up for hard work. And he would loan us out to all the relatives to help them on weekends and do whatever we needed to do and help their business grow. And we were always giving back the family that way and, shoveling snow and all that stuff that we did.
Sure.
And then for my mother, who was a concentration camp survivor, her thing is when we grew up, if we got a 90 on a test, she would ask if anybody got a 95. If we got a 95, she'd ask if anybody got 100. If we got 100, she'd ask how many other people got 100. And so her message to us was, you can always do better. So I come to work, Ken, in my world with what I call my two schizophrenic voices on each shoulder.
All right.
One of them says, nothing makes up for hard work. So I come to work and I put this enormous energy into what I do. And the second one is from my mother is, you could do better today than you did yesterday.
Which is almost like it's not good enough. So it's almost like work hard, and no matter how hard you work, there's probably no finish line.
I
It
probably should get counseling on that one day in my life and get that
might
thing.
lead to some workaholic traits, but I'll let you finish. Yeah, go ahead.
But we did that, and then family first. So it's helped me over the years. I've just started businesses 3, 4, and 5 now. So I've always been in the entrepreneurial world. Coming out of Rutgers University and going into accounting, it was a bad decision. My dad was right. He told me, don't do it. Go the economic route that you love. But no, what did he know? He was an older guy, and I was smarter than him because I was 18.
Sure.
And so we did that. And then it was shortly after I got into accounting that I realized that was a big mistake and started the route of small business. Got very fortunate with an opportunity that came out when in my early 20s in the industrial packaging business. And that was the first business that I started. Really came out of the old ink business, but it was industrial packaging. And I did that until 1987. And then I didn't understand when I was young, Ken, and this is why I teach a lot of business owners, that just because you're growing at 20 and 30% per year, doesn't mean your cash flow is growing at 20, 30% per year. It's usually the exact opposite. Your cash
Sure.
flow is getting sucked up. You can't figure out why you're so profitable, but you have no money. And in 1987, my wife and I went to a New York Jets game, which we always had season tickets for, and we argued the entire game in the stands.
Not
And
about the Jets.
no,
That
we
seems
didn't
like
argue
that
about the
might be
Jets.
the
We argued.
normal argument at a Jets game would
It
be the
is. It's
Jets.
hard being a Jet fan. I know. But I sold that company. I packaged it and sold it. That was my first experience. Then got into the environmental cleanup business, did that for 5 years, and then sold that when I saw the situation on the ground changing, and then entered in 1993 the finance business, which I was actually seeking out to get into. I was going to do it in New Jersey, but my wife got pregnant with my twins, and we moved to California. And then I started and eventually just took that entire company out from there with all the people and formed what we have today, Prosperity Financial Group, which is a $400+ million entity. And then later on, Prosperity Wealth Management, which is another $400+ million entity. So between those two companies, we're touching the door, knocking on the door of $1 billion, but it keeps you up at night, and it's an entrepreneur's dream, and all dreams are connected sometimes with nightmares.
Of course. So in those early companies, when you got into them, because I think there's a term that's like, to me, it's overused. Like when people say serial entrepreneur, and I'm like, you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. And there's a difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner. I would consider myself a little bit more of a business owner and leader in the sense that to me, true entrepreneur typically is always looking for opportunities, and typically goes into things with the idea of an exit. When you went into those first couple of businesses, did you know that you were only going to be in them for a set period of time, or did you just kind of look at the tarot cards and go, this probably isn't going the way I want it to, it might be a good time to exit? So was it pre-planned, or was it something that was more circumstantial based on what was going on in the industry and the market when you decided to exit?
Well, I agree with you on what you just said, Ken, with the serial entrepreneur. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm going to answer that in a funny way in a moment. But when I got into the finance business, my dream was to build something tremendous and sell it.
Yeah.
How big, I really didn't have in mind. What year, I didn't have in mind. It wasn't the begin with the end in mind type of program. It was begin with the end, but not with the date of the end.
Sure.
What does that mean in English? I never thought I'd have a 30-year career, because that's turned me into a business owner, and that made me start other entities along the way.
Right.
Because I did that. And being a business owner means you have to deal with cash flow. You have to deal with receivables. You deal with all the unpleasant part of it, of the business owner. And particularly, a lot of that is related to labor. You have to deal with people and all the intricacies and extraordinary personalities that people bring to the table on that. My wife asked me the other day, she said, if and when you sell this company, Elliot, these companies, what are you going to do? I said, well, that's easy. She said, what? You're going to retire? We're going to play golf? What? Tell me something really good that's exciting. I said, oh, I'm just going to start another company.
Right. That's
I said, what?
exactly.
I said, well, yeah, I'm going to start a leisure and travel business for the average person on a subscription business. She said, you already know what you're going to do? I said, of course, I've been thinking about this for a while.
Right. I know I feel the same way. And I don't think, at least for me, the role models I've seen in my life that, and I think this is maybe a generation beyond us, but where the idea was go somewhere, work, or start a business and, run that business, get to some magical age, and then sell it. And then I guess sit on your ass or whatever, for the rest of your life. And I don't think that model works for most of us, right? Because I think the thing that we get our identity and our value out of, at least part of it, is contributing, is helping people, whether it's customers, whether it's employees or whatever. And I feel the same way. It's like, if I got out of what I'm doing, it wouldn't be to sit on the couch. I think it would be to just pivot into something else, more than likely. So along this journey, when did you guys start building a family?
I started building a family in 19, well, it turned out we tried to build a family 10 years before we did it.
Sure.
But in 1993, I had twins. In 1995, I had another one. So while I was starting this company, starving to death, and I have to say it was starving to death, because I could have gone to McDonald's and gotten a raise.
Yeah.
In a few days. I had my twins there. That helped a lot. People say that, the pressure of home sometimes is so great, it squashes your business drive. For me, it gave me more business drive, because I didn't give myself the opportunity for failure. Part of that World War II, again, the generation of my dad, was always take care of your family.
Right.
You owe them financial security, and you owe them personal security. That's what you owe them. And so I took those seriously. So I just never looked back and started the build. I doubted myself. I'm as human as the next person, having the good days and bad days. But I never gave up, and I'm going to keep building and keep building and keep building and keep building until I feel it's big enough that one day I don't need to build it anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a very similar experience where I had gotten out of the military and I hadn't graduated college. And so the job offers weren't really rolling in, or at least the high paying ones. And so I sort of went, I didn't even know where it came from, honestly, maybe because we had entrepreneurs in our family or whatever, but I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go into business for myself. And we found this company that it was a low cost company because we didn't have a lot of money, and the owner would take financing and all of that. And at the time we bought them, which was 80, was it 89? 89, beginning of 89, a few months after I got out of the military, we buy him out. And again, he's carrying most of the paper. And literally a week later, my wife goes, hey, remember how we were going to kind of try to have a kid? Well, I'm pregnant, right? This is in early 89. And I guess the first thing I had was a combination of joy and fear, because we wanted to start a family. But the other part was exactly your point. It was that pressure was this thing that if it failed up until that point, was like big deal. Like what, we're hardworking. We'll go get jobs. We don't have a lot of overhead there. And it went from that to exactly what you're saying. Like this absolutely needs to work. And I remember I got a little bit complacent because it did start to work. That pressure did work. But 3, 4 years later, I was feeling a little complacent. And then along came child number two, and it was like, like, more college, more expenses. So I can completely relate. So you're bringing up your family, which starts in the 90s. Everybody's still in Jersey, right? You've been born and raised, it sounds like, right? In
All my
Jersey?
relatives are in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm the only one of them in California.
Oh, you're in California now.
I'm in California now. We moved
Oh,
here.
I missed that.
My kid's mother, my ex-wife,
Yep.
is a Californian, was a Californian. And so she made me promise to her, this is not a bad thing, but she made me promise to her that after having our third miscarriage, that we would if we did get pregnant and past the 4th month, that we would move back to California so she could be closer to her family.
Got it. Okay.
And so she got pregnant with my twins. We made it to month 4. She asked me if that deal was still a legitimate deal, that we could move to California. And so she went out here, found us a place to live. We moved to Danville originally. Now we live in Lafayette. I'm remarried, long time, 2 very long-term marriages, and live now in Lafayette with my wife now. And my kids are scattered around the country at this point.
Got it. How many total?
I had 3, and then one is not with us anymore. So I have one in Dallas and one in Washington, D.C., both with great jobs and starting families.
Okay. And so raising kids in the 90s in California, businesses are, it's tough at the beginning, but yeah, walk me through that part of your life.
Well, it was interesting. I have to tell you, the raising kids and having your marriage unravel at the same time and trying to build a business at the same time, your business, they can't all coexist.
Right.
They just don't. So I tell everybody on any given day, when people say, how do you keep balance in your life? You don't. You're every day out of balance. That's what an entrepreneur's world is. Every day you're out of balance. The key, Ken, is to how do you get your life back into balance, knowing that you're going to be out of balance the next day as well. So that's understanding. You cannot be a great business owner, a great dad or parent, and a great spouse all on the same day. It's not possible to do. So one of them takes a back seat on any given day. You owe it to your kids to be a great parent, period. You owe it to your employees to be a great boss. What's left? And that's the problem with being a business owner. There's a reason why dentists who are mostly entrepreneurs have the highest divorce rate and suicide rate in the country. They cannot balance their lives out. That's all they do is work. So it doesn't make it. But I want you to know that the key that I found for business owners is looking at what you have and realizing that whatever you have and whatever you're doing is to be in the moment of that. So if you're in your business, be in the moment of your business. If you're with your kids, be in the moment of your kids. If you're with your spouse, be with your spouse. Don't be with your spouse in your business. Don't try to think about my business during the night when I'm trying to be a good husband at the same time, because they don't go together. You'll drift away. Your mind will be somewhere else. And if you're not thinking about business or work, and your mind is somewhere else, then you're not going to focus, and bad things are going to happen at work.
But I'm guessing you got to this knowledge through experience, right? So in the mid 90s and late 90s, that you probably didn't have all that figured out just yet, right? So what was giving for you back then? Where did you find yourself particularly out of balance in certain areas at that time?
Well, my wife at that time, I thought we had a very good marriage. She didn't. I didn't see it. I was a bit blind on what was going on. Shame on me. And she was getting more and more unhappy in her world. Mm-hmm. She already had a preponderance towards depression anyway. And I didn't see it all. And so she finally said, listen, I'm in a position of wanting to hurt myself now. And I didn't see it coming. And so we could not get out of that spiral down that she was going through, that I entered with her. And so she was angry every day because her life was taking care of kids, 3 kids in diapers, and 3 kids in preschool, and 3 kids with wet noses and wet butts and things like that. She was really miserable, and there was no room for me in that misery with her. And so at some point when I asked her, I said, is this going to get any better? After multiple counselors, 4. And she said, I don't think so, but I'm willing to wait till the kids are 18, till we leave each other. And I said, I can't do that. I can't not live in a loving home I'll die of a heart attack, I'm sure.
Sure.
And so that's when I pulled the trigger uh, back in 2000 or 2001.
Okay. And so the kids were all still like single digit ages, it
Seven,
sounds like
seven, and
from,
6.
okay. And so then you're out there, she's out there. Did you guys raise your family? I don't mean to get too personal, but part of the story. So did you guys kind of co-parent, or how did that
We
work
did.
from that point?
We
Yeah.
did. We've always gotten along fairly well. We had our moments, but we've gotten along. In the beginning, she really wanted to take a break, and I had the kids 5 days out of every 7, which was fine with me. I was willing to do that, but it did affect my work because I was leaving work at 3 o'clock every day.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I left work at 3 o'clock to pick up my kids because I didn't want them in daycare for the most part. And so that was a struggle. And that had a negative impact on work on those days, that my days ended early on that. But for the most part, we co-parented much through that. As she got happier in her life, it became a 50-50 relationship with the kids with time and never with money, but always with time.
And so, you know, the kids are developing, you guys are working things out, or not working things out, but I mean, you know, work it out well enough to do the shared custody and co-parenting thing. And what happens later? I mean, you know, I know you lost a son. We talked about it. You're very, you know, you're public about it. When did that happen? And I'm guessing that was what, early 2011, something like that.
2015.
Oh, 2015. Okay.
2015. So he was a sophomore at the University of Montana. I didn't see that he was struggling as a senior in high school the year before that. I didn't see it. I just thought he was kind of a goofy kid. He had a car. I mean, it was pretty good life, but he didn't seem to be enjoying it like he should have. And then in winter semester, he goes back to college and something was really wrong. You could just feel it was wrong. And I wanted to go up there, and his mom talked me out of going up there, that he was just struggling with grades, but actually he was struggling with depression. And he was just there 2 weeks, and we called him on a Friday, and his cell phone was turned off. And no teenager, 19-year-old turns off their cell phone.
Right.
And so we're looking for him, leaving messages. I am, his mom is, call me, texting, call me. And at 6:30 at night, Federal Express showed up with a 6-page suicide note.
Oh, wow.
He'd been gone since 1 a.m. No drugs, no alcohol, walked up the highway and jumped in front of a truck. And so
Wow.
in a suicide note to us, Ken, he wrote, "Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I never would have told you how I felt. I never would have asked for your help, and I never would have taken your help." And so I read that. It was 6 pages, but that was the main paragraph. I read the 6 pages all the way up to go claim his body in Montana and come back. And on the way back, I just focused on that paragraph. And I turned to his mother and I said, "Look, we need to start something, start some charity to stop other people from feeling this destruction and devastation that we're about to go through." And she said, I'm out. I can't do this. I don't even know if I want to be alive now. And so my current wife, and I started the charity A Brighter Day with the goal of creating resources on stress and depression for teens and their families, with the goal of stopping teen suicide. So fast forward that 8 years later, and we're touching 5,000 to 10,000 families a month in all 50 states with some resource, one of our resources. It's amazing. And we know we're stopping teen suicide. And this weekend, we just had a car show that we sponsor locally here in Walnut Creek, California, that we gave out resources to everybody going up there. We collected, money, because you got to fundraise as a charity. Sadly, that's the mother's milk of charity. It's fundraising.
Sure.
But we had 20 to 30,000 people come through our booths over the weekend.
Wow. How did you, gosh, it's not completely shocking. It's really impressive, but it's not completely shocking that someone takes tragedy and does something good with it, because that's one of the options, right? But what is surprising and unique is, I think, how quickly you were able to recognize that, because there's really, I mean, I guess there's multiple paths, but top of my head, it's either go down the rabbit hole, or you do nothing and you kind of numb out, or you use it as a catalyst for good. And it seems like right away something hit you and you just knew that you had to do that? I mean, you said it was before you even got out there, right? Like on the way out there?
On the way out there, I read it. On the way back, I focused on that one paragraph, and that's when I decided we need to do something. I didn't know what it was going to look like. It was really early, but I've been in charities before. I've been president of Boys and Girls Clubs and American
Sure.
Cancer thing locally in New Jersey too. So I'm used to doing charity work. I'm used to giving back. It's just part of who I am. I give back. And even my mother would tell the story that when she grew up in Vienna during the Depression, that and her dad was a librarian. Her dad would take all the coins out of his pocket every Friday. They put them in a charity box, and they were barely putting food on the table. And they would take all their coins and put them in there. And so when my kids were growing up, they put all their coins together in a charity box, and we ended up buying stuff for an ambulance, to help them.
Right.
And so we're used to giving back. So the idea of giving back was there. How it was going to look and what we're going to do kind of developed, but we knew we were going to give back.
How did it develop into, I mean, this is a major thing now. I mean, your idea could have been, just creating a circle of grieving parents in your local community, which would still be amazing. But to have literally at this point, I'm assuming if it's 5 to 10,000 a month, it's hundreds of thousands of people that you guys have helped. How did it grow like that?
So we did the original concept there, Ken, was when I was thinking about how to develop this, I thought, what do kids have in common? What do they have in common? And my original thought, because I was a little bit of a jock and my son was definitely a jock, is sports. And the more I thought about sports, the more I realized that that's no longer what they have in common. My generation had sports in common. Their generation has music in common, but not sports. So I thought, okay, we'll do a music-based charity. And so I met with a number of bands, the Beatles band, a Beach Boys band, a Blood, Sweat, and Tears band, those kind of bands, cover bands. And I said, what do you guys think about doing every year concerts for teens that we would put tables in there and we go and invite all these resources that are already all over the internet to have a booth there. And we'd invite teens in there to come and listen, and their parents to listen to a free concert and pick up all these great resources. And as I did that market research, I found out that wasn't going to be effective. First of all, teens aren't going to come to hear my kind of music.
Right.
At all. Secondly, if they're with their friends, they will never go to a booth and admit they need help. Never. So we failed on both ends of those. And I thought, okay, they have music in common. And then one of the bands that I was very close with said, Elliot, you need to have their bands playing for them, their type of music. If it's hip hop, if it's grunge, if it's garage, if it's whatever it is, if their music plays for them. So we thought we would take the concept of a battle of the bands that's already out there, repackage it, called Teen Band Showcase, and that's how we started. And luckily, the local school system where my kids went to opened up their doors to us.
Nice.
Chamber of Commerce. And then I helped to convince them to take a survey. There are 4 high schools there. Take a survey of your teens to find out how many of them suffered from depression, thought about suicide, or stressed out. Because they said, Elliot, we really think it's such a small percentage that you're not going to be able to reach a lot of people. But they finally agreed with enough cajoling and the PTA help to take that survey. And it came back to just under 50% of the school system, an affluent school system, the teens have thought about suicide at least once.
Wow.
Wow. They were shocked. I was shocked because I figured, boy, I'm going to be happy if it's 5%. They're telling me it's not even 1%.
Right.
It comes up as close to 50. And so that's when I knew we were onto something. And so we started doing these battle of the bands all over Northern California. Some towns were more open than others. Some towns didn't want to admit that suicide is a problem for teens because they felt if you mention it, then you were giving approval to take your life, which was around 50 years ago, that thinking process, probably
right.
80 years ago, right? And so we started that, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and then COVID hit. And at that point, we knew we needed to do something different. We did pivot a little bit at first to try to do the Battle of the Bands online. That had its limitations. But we really said, we really need to come out of this stronger than ever. So we took our website and we beefed it up to create a teen survival toolkit, a parent survival toolkit, resources coming out, new resources coming out every other week. I write them, and I have a full-time writer that writes things for mostly for parents. We write them in parents' language. And as we were writing this, and it's multi-pages and doing videos like this, podcasts like this, we also realized that teens don't read very well. They're not going to go to the website for the most part and read. Some do, but a lot of them don't. So we created a texting hotline that works 24/7 for teens in all 50 states that's free. And so a teen on Christmas Day, on their birthday, at 3 in the morning, can text and say, I need help, and get an answer with less than 5 minutes, generally less than 2 minutes, and talk for 40 minutes at a time. Then they got to get it off. They can do it again, but they can only keep a trained counselor on for 40 minutes at a time.
I heard you on another podcast. Is this in partnership with Better Health? If I
No,
remember?
that one's not. BetterHelp is the next one we did.
Okay.
But I will tell you, Ken, that almost every teen texts the same question within 5 minutes of being on. It's about 30 new teens every single month.
And what is it? What's the question?
Am I the only one feeling this way?
So they just feel isolated and
Isolated.
alone.
They're totally isolated. The world is getting darker and they don't know where to go. Now, texting, we know that the online works so well, the website. We know that texting doesn't work for everybody. And I know for some parents that drives them nuts because texting is part of the problem too. And social media is part of the problem. So we teamed with BetterHelp to provide Zoom counseling services for teens and families in all 50 states. And when we did our market research with BetterHelp, we found that, and by the way, you can go to BetterHelp without us, but if you go through our website, we add something to it for you to want to do that. We found out that it takes about 90 days to get your teen fully out of crisis. So if your teen comes home, Ken, and said, I'm hurting myself or thinking of it, it takes 90 days to get beyond that. And so we decided as a charity that if they go through our website, we will pay for 90 days of counseling. It's $100, $125 an hour. We'll pay for that as a charity because we don't want you as a parent ever having to make a decision of, do I feed my other 2 kids or do I get my 3rd child help? I can't do both.
So help is there for the first 90 days, get them out of the woods, so to speak. And then, that's awesome.
And then if the teen says, so if the teen needs inpatient behavioral health, if the teen needs somebody that's local, which takes 6 to 10 weeks to get, sometimes local, and we go and help them find those people. We do not have a list of preferred people. We have a preferred list of inpatient, but not of outpatient services yet. But we have so many contacts. We can help you find something in Des Moines or Cincinnati or San Francisco. We can find that for you.
For the parent who is in the position you were in 2015, where maybe you think something's up, but your kid just won't talk to you, what do you do? I mean, I guess you go to your website, but like, what have you learned since then? Like what tools, because I think that's most parents, right? Are I know something's up. They won't talk to me. I don't know what it is. Am I overreacting? What's your advice there?
Okay, well, most parents go to the school counselor, which is almost worthless.
Right.
Counselors, or they go to the pediatrician, which maybe is something.
Yeah.
But they need some help. And they need that help. I mean, they just simply need that help. So that's why we created the service here, to do that for them. We want them to get help, whatever that help is. Sometimes they call us and say, I don't know what to do, or they email us and say, I don't know what to do. But here's where parenting has changed so much, Ken, is that when you and I grew up as contemporaries here, and we grew up, and you asked your kids about school, you still got the same caveman monosyllabic answers that I got. How's school? Fine. Good. My mother got very ill when I was in 10th grade, and she didn't get better until I was a senior. So I missed her in high school. And my dad would walk in. My dad gave me the best high school experience that any kid could ask for. I was on a football team. I was quarterback. I was having a great time. I was dating. Oh my goodness. Everything you want in a high schooler, I lived that life.
Sure.
Great. And his thing was, look, I'm working hard. If you don't blow your grades, I'm not going to give you a curfew. I'm not going to make it harder. You still have your Chevy Vega in the driveway to drive. Just don't mess up. And I listened to him and I didn't mess up. And he would say, how's school going? And I would say, fine. Okay, good. Shrug my shoulders. I don't know. That kind of thing. Well, that doesn't work today, but that's still the same answer your teens are giving you as a parent. And now we have parents have to learn how to ask better questions. And maybe I should have asked better questions too. But the questions are, what's your favorite class? Why? Who's your favorite teacher? Why? Who's your least favorite teacher? Why? Who's your best teacher? What did you learn today? Why is your chemistry your least favorite class? What is it about chemistry or the teacher or your friends? How's your best friend Jimmy or Johnny or Mary doing in chemistry with you? Are they struggling too? You know, and you've got to be able to ask these questions in a non-judgmental way and have dinner without a cell phone being in a room. Boy, is that difficult for parents to do.
Yeah.
No cell phones in a room at dinner. And if you can't pull that off, then when you're driving your teen to some type of activity, turn off the radio, take the earbuds out, no cell phones, and just talk. Don't put them in the back seat, put them in the front seat, no cell phones, talk. Ask those questions. What's really going on under the surface? And then if you still need even more help, Ken, take a walk once a week with your teen, not an aggressive hike, but a walk, because our brains are programmed to walk and talk at the same time, and you can learn a lot, again, in a non-judgmental way. Like if they're struggling in chemistry and your gut tells you, I should go and hire a tutor, ask the question, would it help you if I hired a tutor,
Right.
private tutor? And maybe don't tell anybody I did it. You know, don't tell your friends because it'll make you feel stupid. Or maybe your teen doesn't really want a tutor. They're not even going to class because they hate it.
Right.
They've tuned it out. They're not going. That tutor's not going to make a difference. It's not going to make them go to class. You got to find out what's going on.
You said a couple of times, you know, in a non-judgmental way, right? Which I think is so key, because what I think is weird is we all grew up doing the things, you know, you were quarterback of the football team, you were dating girls, like you said, you had a high school experience that was pretty enriching. You probably also went to parties and drank beer. You probably also did all of the stuff that all of us did that we all seem to forget when our kids turn 13, 14, or 15. And all of a sudden we're like, you did what? Instead of going, hey, I know this is going to happen. I know you're going to have sex. I know you're going to drink. I know you might even, you know, decide to smoke some weed or something. I did. Like, let's have a conversation about it. Right. I mean, I think when the judgments come in, the wall goes up, and understandably, I mean, like, why do I want to talk to someone that's like, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing? You know, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not a bad kid, but I feel judged every time I talk to my parents. So I'm just not going to talk to them. Right. And I think there's something to be said about just remembering what it was like. You know, I don't know. I can vividly remember all the stupid shit I did in high school. You know what I mean? And I'll share those stories. Some, if it's going to have a good impact, right? If it's like, hey, don't do this. Like, you're going to drink. So you're going to drink. That's fine. I know you're going to drink. Can you call me instead of getting behind the wheel? I mean, just those kinds of conversations.
Well, that's really a hard thing you're saying. Listen to what you're saying. If I be truthful and honest with my kids and tell them I did what high schoolers do, then am I giving them permission to do it too? That's the problem. That's the question.
I'm giving them permission to do it in a smarter way. Like,
right.
Don't get behind the wheel of a car. Yeah, I listen. We know that by graduation years, I'm making up this stat, but I'm guessing 90% of college or high school seniors have drinking at least a little bit, and probably half of them have binge drinking. So if I know it's a high degree, and I think I would open it up with, like, listen, I'm not advocating, but if this is where you're going, this is how I'd like you to handle yourself, and this is how I can support you. That's just a real conversation.
It's a smarter way to do it. It doesn't always work. I have a really good friend of mine who got really high with us in high school and college, and almost smoked himself out of George Washington University. It wasn't for his father's death, he would have. He told his son that story, the younger son that story, and the younger son almost smoked himself out of college. Same thing. And wouldn't even talk to him because he's like, well, you did it, so I'm doing it. So don't lecture me.
Right.
So it wasn't handled well. He probably would do it differently today. You can't lie about it. You weren't a square. You weren't a dork in the corner. You were human, having a good time.
Right.
And I've told my kids that. I said, I was a kid who drank too much alcohol. That was the group that got high a lot more than me. I didn't really enjoy that. they didn't enjoy the alcohol, but together we made a heck of a team. You know, kind of thing.
Right. Well, I think obviously each situation's different and it depends a little bit on the temperament and maturity of the kid, right? So I don't want to paint it all with the same brush, but at least the recollection in whatever words you decide to communicate of, hey, I was there, I did certain things, so that you can at least come at it. Listen, forget about even parents to kids. I think just human being to human being. I think whenever you can appreciate someone else's model of the world, you've got a lot better chance of building rapport with them, right? So maybe it's not, here's all the dumb stuff I did in high school, but at least going in the back of my mind when I'm going to communicate, hey, I did all this stuff too. So let's maybe.
You got to be honest about it.
Right.
Be smart. Look, you're teaching your kids to, if you're going to have sex, have safe sex.
Right.
If you're going to drink, be smart.
Right.
You know, my father did something really interesting with me, because we got drunk. We went to an 8th grade dance, and I was still too dorky in those days to be comfortable with girls, and I kind of walked around the gym floor. I remember seeing my son walk around the gym floor, feeling so bad for him because I remember I did that.
Yeah.
And so we went out, and the drinking age in New Jersey was 18, and we went out and waited for an 18-year-old at the liquor store to come on over and bought us a whole bunch of beer, and we got really wasted on whiskey, Seagram 7, and beer. And I remember walking in and to the home, and I didn't say goodnight to my father, who was waiting up for me, and my brother was home from college. So they were just looking at me like, uh-oh. And I must have smelled terrible. I'm sure I smelled like beer.
The Seagrams.
The next morning, my father walked in, woke me up at 8 in the morning, and put his hand out and shook my hand and goes, how's my drunken son? And well, Dad, I can explain. He goes, no, go take a shower. We're going to talk about this. But I don't want your mother smelling the beer on you. And I went out there, and he sat down with me. And he said, look, I can't stop you from doing this.
Right.
I want you to be a lot smarter than, how many did you have last night? It was like 10 Hoppengators, which is malt liquor.
Right.
That's not what you do. It's not a smart way to do it. And so he wasn't happy with my behavior, but he also understand that if I'm going to behave like that, I need to be less smarter about it too.
Absolutely. So it's amazing the amount of materials and resources that you guys have given to people, and we'll make sure to put everything in our show notes. Where are you going next with this? I mean, is it, you guys have gotten bigger and bigger? You guys are nationwide now. Do you have people that run that, that charity so that you can do your day job? Yeah.
Oh, the newest program that we've been beta testing is we're taking a page from AA. So we're thinking about coming up with a monthly, what would be weekly, one day, Thursday night program, so to speak, Thursday, where parents can dial in, not kids, but parents who have a million questions and need help on how to deal with this, can dial in and talk to a counselor or another parent and say, how do I do this? How do I ask that question? What would you ask? How do I do this non-judgmentally? I want to fix them. To my kid, I want to take them by the throat and shake them until they understand what I'm saying. And so that we're beta testing that right now. The idea of bringing that out in every time zone next year, where we can really help parents and be a steady Eddie. The page of AA meets, loneliness and depression. The New York Times ran an article last week in the review section, and whether you're a fan of the Times or not is irrelevant, but they ran up, and it's the loneliness of being today's teen. And it's true. Teens are really lonely, but it's also that their parents don't know what to do about it.
Right.
I can't unlonely my teen. I'm 35 years older than my teen. How do I make them less lonely? And so that's what we're hoping to provide a venue for them to ask other parents the same question.
Well, I think the work that you're doing is amazing. It's inspiring. I think you're honoring your son by helping so many other people's sons and daughters. And it's just really, really cool to see. And that's, really why I wanted to have you on the podcast. And I'm so glad you were able to do it. We'll make sure to, if anyone's inspired to give as well, that would be great. Because again, this is, it's a charity. They run off donations. So, and I'll be doing that too. We'll put all the ways to do that into our show notes as well, Elliot. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ken. I love being here. Much appreciated.
All right, sir. Thank you.